circulate in the society.
Now, thank you very much, Ram, for that. After Kenya confirmed its first case of COVID-19 on March 13th, this has taken a lot of precedence over so many other issues, including a phenomenon that has not been witnessed in the last 70 years. What am I talking about? That is the issue of the locust invasion. And what does that mean, especially for food security? So the locust invasion, how much has been spent? And do we have an opportunity, or is there a victory in sight? That is a conversation we're going to be engaging on this morning. And I'm going to be joined by the PS of Agriculture in the Ministry Department of Agriculture. That is Mr. Hamadi Boga, to just bring us up to speed as to so far where we have gotten in as far as the locust invasion is concerned. Good morning, sir. Yes, good morning, PS. Good morning, Hamadi Boga. How are you? This morning, we want to focus on the issue of the locust invasion. What impact has it had so far in as far as food security is concerned?
The locust started invading the country in December last year. And they have been around for the last 5 months. We've had 3 waves. They have covered almost 28 counties, and we have been wrestling with them together with our partners, the FAO and the Desert Locust Control Organization and the county governments.
Now 28 counties.
So far, so good. We have made a lot of progress. We have managed now to reduce them from the 28 counties to around 3 counties. Right now, the locusts are only in Turkana, Marsabit, and Isiolo, and we have managed to really contain them and minimize any damage. In parts of counties like Tharaka-Nithi, Embu, Kitui, and Makueni, they invaded some farmlands, but largely they have been confined to the pastoralist areas where they have mainly been eating the vegetation there. But also, luckily, because of good rains, the vegetation has been able to recover. So I would say, in terms of the impact on food security, I don't think they will have a big impact on our food security situation.
Now, since we confirmed our first case, that is in December, how much has been spent in control efforts against the locust invasion?
From the GOK side, we have spent around 500 million, mainly on purchase of pesticides, protective clothing for those who are spraying, sprayers, both handheld sprayers as well as ULV sprayers and motorized sprayers, as well as training of personnel in all those counties and deploying the personnel on the ground for those 5 months. But we have also received support from FAO. They have spent also some money from their side to complement our efforts.
Now, talking about personnel on ground, there have been issues raised by those particular people, basically frontline persons on ground as far as locust invasion is concerned. And one of their concerns has been the issue of non-payment and the lack of protective gear. What is your take on that?
I think it's a continuous exercise. Initially, we had we had procured about 700 PPE kits, which we realized were few, and we have been procuring some more PPE kits to distribute to the NYS. And I think that is something that we are addressing as we go forward, because it takes time for these procurement processes to kick in. And FAO has recruited also an non-governmental organization to support with the logistics down there because of basically procurement issues. But from our side, we have given the counties all the support that they have needed in terms of training and capacity building and making sure that the exercise is undertaken. The staff from the counties will also be supported through support from World Bank. I think we are in the process of organizing that to make sure that the money goes to the counties directly and they're able to pay their workers.
Okay, thank you there, sir. Now crossing over to the issue, you've said currently these pests are only in 3 counties after being eradicated from a total of 28 since the invasion in December. Can we now then quantify the damage that has been done, especially to the crop?
There was no serious damage to crops that we were able to observe in all the counties where they have been. Most of the time when they invaded cropland, we were able to react very quickly and control them within a day. And I haven't seen any reports of serious damage to crop. Where they have been most impactful, and we are still assessing that, has been in the pasture lands, especially around Isiolo, Samburu, Marsabit, and Turkana, where they have been for a longer time. But even there, because the region has received a lot of rain, the vegetation has been able to regenerate itself.
Now,
and also our partners, the FAO have hired the Red Cross to do the impact assessment. In the next 4 weeks, we'll have a more comprehensive report.
Okay, very well said. Now, with after Kenya confirms its first case of COVID-19, focus has been on mitigation measures dealing in COVID-19. Have this affected government's efforts in eradicating the locusts?
No, not at all. Actually, in our ministry, we have created what is known as the Food Security War Room, and it has 9 parameters that it's tracking. One of those parameters is locust control. So we have kept it in focus, and we have made it part of our COVID-19 response strategies to make sure that it also doesn't become a problem to food security by ignoring it. So we have carried it along together with all COVID-19 mitigation measures.
What of the issue of the current rainy or other weather patterns that we're seeing? Has this affected aerial spraying that we've had government say that this is one of the most effective methods of eradicating the pest infestation?
When the rains started, it affected the aerial spraying because of the issues of visibility by the pilots as they do surveillance, as well as they do spraying. Also, when it's raining, you can't spray because the spray will be diluted and will be ineffective. So it slowed it down a bit, but not quite, because every time there was some sunshine, we were able to still conduct surveillance and spraying. And right now, from the field operations, we don't hear much complaints about this factor of rain. I think the operations are going on very well, and surveillance is going on very well. In each of those counties, we have over 200 youth working on the ground to do surveillance, as well as helicopters doing surveillance, locating places, breeding places for the locusts so that we can target the young locusts, which are known as hoppers. And we have right now mapped about 16 sites where we have seen hoppers coming up, and in the next 5 weeks we have a chance to control them before they start flying, and we are going on with the monitoring. The good thing with the hopper bands, which are usually on the ground, they are easier to control through ground spraying. The challenge that we face mostly is the vastness of the area. Northern Kenya is very vast, and most of it is uninhabited. So sometimes it's a challenge to locate where some of these locusts could have laid their eggs. But the work continues, and we are working very well with the counties and with the communities and with the development partners.
So is there light at the end of the tunnel as far as dealing with the locust invasion is concerned?
Yes, there is light at the end of the tunnel. I think looking at our interventions, looking at the way we have deployed ourselves and the surveillance that is going on, every week we get a map of where the locusts are. We have deployed a lot of digital technology in the control of these pests. And even the scouts who are on the ground, who are local communities, have been equipped with phones that enable them to transmit data to the command center. And then that data comes to Kilimo House. And we see maps that show that we have really confined the locusts to a very small area of the country. And hopefully by June, July, we would have managed this problem.
Very well said. Now, something we've mentioned there is the issue of the current weather pattern. What impact has it had so far on food security? We have areas that have had flash floods and farms and crops swept away. How the impact so far from where you sit?
From where I see, our food basket has not been severely impacted. And by our food basket, I mean the maize growing areas and also the areas where we grow the major crops like tea, coffee, potatoes, and beans. Most of the areas which have been impacted in Nyanza, some rice paddies in Ahero have been impacted because the lake has risen beyond its previous borders. And so people have been displaced. In total, we estimate about 10,000 hectares have been affected. And those families' livelihoods have also been impacted, and the government has been intervening through the State Department of Devolution, through their relief operations. We are monitoring the total damage and trying to see how to help these communities recover, because most of them are still agricultural communities, and the food security of their households has been shaken. And we will have interventions to support them to re-emerge from this loss. But in terms of the larger food security situation in the country, I would say, for example, usually we do about 2.5 million hectares of maize. So if we lose 10,000 hectares, it's still on the lower side. But I think we have an opportunity to still recover, not necessarily growing maize, but growing other short-term crops which can mature quickly because the season has progressed.
Now, we've talked about the issue of maize. It has not been affected per se, as you've said. It's not in the areas that are experiencing heavy downpour. But now there's the issue that what informed government's thought or rather plan to import maize?
Yeah, usually we consume about 50 million bags of maize annually. This year we produced about 43 million bags. So there's a deficit, obviously, of 7 million bags. We have challenges. Most of the deficit is bridged through imports from Tanzania and Uganda, but we have had challenges. Immediately after COVID, flow across the border is a challenge. And when we looked at our food balance sheet, we saw we are going to experience tightness around July, August, and we allowed the importation of 2 million bags. 2 million bags is what you consume in about 2 months. And so to bridge that before our harvest comes in September, October, November, December. So basically, because of the disruption of global supply chain, it is prudent for us to put a stopgap measure to make sure that under these threats of lockdowns, we don't run out of food.
Now, what options is government then looking at, given that the courts have barred the importation of that particular cachet?
It's disconnected. Yeah?
We'd want now just to remind you that we are live with Pigas in the Ministry of State Department of Agriculture Research and Ministry of Agriculture, Livestock and Fisheries. That is Mr. Hamadi Boga. They're just taking us through what government is doing to ensure that we remain food secure. Issues of locust invasion, the current heavy downpour that has swept across different parts of the country there. Just to recap as we get back to that particular interview, is that confirmation is that there is no severity, especially in the food basket areas, especially the areas that grow maize, potatoes and the likes. And also the current COVID-19 measures have not in any way hampered. They may have slowed down the controls, or rather being put in place to deal with the locust invasion that is currently only prevalent in 3 counties there, unlike 28 counties when we started in December there. That was again. This is our guest this morning. That is a PS of Agriculture. That is Hamadi Boga, taking us through what government has done so far to ensure that we remain food secure. Among government's big 4 agenda is the issue of food security. However, the take home is that in the next few, or rather 2 months to go, there might be a short supply of maize, given that our current output and our consumption lacks around 7 million bags, and the importation of those particular 2 million bags was to plug that deficit. Now, with that matter already halted by the courts, we'd want to know what other options are out there for the government. That is in vis-a-vis to the issue of the slump, or rather decline, and also disruption, global disruptions of the value chain, and now looking at the issue of transportation, because this deficit in normal circumstances would have been plugged by importation of maize from neighboring countries like Tanzania. But now that is not the case because of COVID-19. We're pursuing to look at what government is looking to do now. Maize farmers, especially in Ahero, rice paddies have been affected by the current flood. So we might see a tightening, or rather the rise in price of rice going forward in the next 2 months or so before we bring in our rest of our harvest there. That's just a take home and a recap of what we've been discussing this morning. And the conversation still continues. Remember, we are live in various social media platforms. We are live on KBC, Channel 1 TV, on Facebook, as well as YouTube. Any concerns that you want raised in regard to food security, that is the place, or those other platforms to use. My Twitter handle is at Ray Manyara, and the official station handle is at KBC Channel 1 TV. Now, going back to our guest this morning, Bonapies, there you were highlighting on the issue of now the stoppage, or rather the seize by the courts there to just stop the importation of that deficit around that you put at 2 million bags. So what other options is the government exploring?
Well, the only way to bridge a food deficit is either importation or growth. Of course, our farmers are planting now, but this will feed into the balance sheet for the next year. So this food balance sheet for this year, we have to bridge the gap through importation. We look at what the court has decided, and I think the Attorney General and the government will respond accordingly.
Very well said. So, in other words, if this fail, if these options that we currently have, looking at other interventions that you can go by, we cannot grow that crop immediately to satisfy the 2 months that we're looking at. Are we seeing a situation where we're going to have a shortage of maize in the next 2 months?
I'm sure we'll be able to import, because the issues that were raised by Omtata are issues of standards which can be addressed.
Very well said. Now, still keeping up on issues of food security. Now, what is government doing to support smallholder farmers, especially who are also engaged in the export business, looking at the current global disruption of the value chain, of the agriculture value chain? What is government doing to support the smallholder farmers, especially in the export subsector?
I think the export is bouncing back, because even the people in Europe where we export also require food, and they import their food, especially horticultural produce from Kenya. Usually on a week we export about 5,000 tons. That is down to about 3,500, mostly because of flights. But working with the horticulture industry and the Ministry of Transport and other stakeholders, we are opening up more flights to be able to fly the produce into Europe. So I think that will bounce back.
Okay, well. So what are your expectations ahead of the budget presentation of the year, fiscal year 2020-2021, that is away like 3 weeks to come?
Yeah, we have already presented our budget to Parliament and also to the National Treasury. We know that what has been allocated. Of course, we could do with more resources, and we are talking with the development partners to continue supporting the sector, because this is a sector that can lift up everybody, because we are able farmers are able to earn more through the programs that we have put in place. One of the three of the areas of focus for the ministry is to increase the smallholder farmer income, to make sure that they earn more from their produce, and then grow agriculture by having large-scale farms and introducing agro-processing hubs across the country, and finally building household resilience, because there are some households which are still poor, who are living below the poverty line, and they are not able to be food secure. And some of the interventions that we are putting in place is to make sure that these households come out of poverty and they are able to secure their households as far as food is concerned. But the budget, next year we are expecting about, for the State Department of Crops alone, around 41 billion, which will be spent in various programs scattered across the country.
Thank you very much, Bona PS, for joining us this morning. That is Hamadi Boga. Have a great day. Thank you very much. Now, after this, I'm going to be joined by the PS, Susan Muchache, under the Ministry of Health.